Greetings fellow men, Servus Männer, this is Red Pill Germany again. Today I want to tell you about how Angela Merkel tries to solve the migrant crisis on a European level. Yes, recently there was a European summit where member states of the EU were discussing how to deal with migrants who were registered in one country but who are moving illegally to another country. According to the Schengen and Dublin system that we have right now, this should not be the case. They should stay in the country where they were first registered in the EU. In this presentation, I want to summarize briefly first what the actual situation is at the moment and why this meeting is so important for Angela Merkel. Then I want to tell you what actually happened at this meeting and how people are trying to interpret the outcome and the results of this meeting now. I can tell you right away that from my point of view, this summit is actually just a Potemkin village that Angela Merkel is setting up in order to fool the European public and especially the German electorate and the CSU. Now, as I have told you already in previous videos, this situation became very urgent for Angela Merkel because her Minister for the Interior, Horst Seehofer, who is also the leader of the Bavarian Conservative Party, CSU, threatened her to close the borders to Austria unilaterally if Angela Merkel does not solve the issue of illegal migrants crossing over the border. That would have forced Merkel's hand and she would have had to fire him, which would of course end the coalition that we have in Germany, and that would also mean the end of Merkel's rule and probably lead to new elections. Horst Seehofer has set an ultimatum for her to solve this issue in 14 days. So she hastily called together a European summit where they would find her quote-unquote European solution to the problem. So already before that summit, I think she met with Greece and with Spain, and both countries agreed to take back migrants that were first registered in Greece or Spain and that moved afterwards to Germany where they shouldn't be. Now they of course only agreed to that because Angela Merkel used the mighty checkbook of the German taxpayer to convince them to take back those people. She also promised the French President Macron that there would be a European budget if France is cooperating in that question. So what she does is actually she promises everybody and their grandmother the money of German taxpayers, just so that they would honor the international agreements that they signed before. Now Angela Merkel returned from this summit saying that 14 other European nations agreed to take back those people. And I wanted to make a video about this yesterday night already, but a friend of mine asked me to have a beer with him and talk about some of his issues, and I agreed on that. So now I'm actually happy that I waited until today to make that video, because what did I read in the newspaper this morning? Oh, Poland, Hungary and the Czech Republic say now that they didn't agree to anything. Of course, Merkel didn't claim that some documents were already signed, but she says that those countries gave their green light for preparing and signing those papers. It's just that the details should be worked out still. These countries that are obviously very important in that question said that they were not even approached by Germany, and had they been asked, they would never have signed or agreed to anything like that. Actually, Viktor Orban said that this was a really important summit for him because they decided that there would not be any quotas, so the migrants would not be distributed quote-unquote fairly over the European continent. This is something that he wants, of course. And now let's have a look at the map. These are the countries that Angela Merkel said gave their word to take back those migrants that were registered in their countries but that are now in Germany because they like it better here apparently. So the first thing that should catch your attention is that Italy and Austria are of course missing here. Italy and Austria are very crucial countries in this question because many of those people are coming from Africa by boat. They land in Italy. Italy just sends them north. Austria just sends them north and they make their way to Germany. This shouldn't be the case. According to European law and contracts between our states, they should stay in Italy where they first set foot on European land. Having such a discussion without Italy and Austria is of course a farce. And then, as second in line in importance or relevance in this question are of course the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland. And these countries say now, as I said, that what Merkel says is not true. They didn't agree to anything. So what countries remain then? We have the Baltic states, we have the Netherlands, we have Luxembourg. Now tell me, how many people from Angola are parachuting over Luxembourg airspace and then land with their parachute somewhere on the marketplace, walking right into the mayor's office saying, I am a persecuted person and I claim asylum here? Nobody. So we do not have hundreds of thousands of illegals coming in through Luxembourg in Germany. So it is very nice to know that Lithuania and Estonia might take back these people, but they are not here. They are not the problem. The people that come through the Balkan and through Italy, they are the problem. So if Angela Merkel tries to sell this pseudo result now as the big solution to the migrant crisis, this is a complete joke. If Horst Seehofer agrees to this and he says, okay, Angela, I gave you 2 weeks and you delivered, so I am satisfied now, then we actually know that Horst Seehofer is not the roaring lion from the south. No, he is just a little pussycat. He is a kitten, nothing else. He is a conservative and a gimp maybe, if he really agrees to that. Or he was actually in league with Angela Merkel from the very beginning and they just agreed to play good cop and bad cop to show the masses that they actually cared about the problem. In my opinion, this whole summit can be described as a Potemkin village that Angela Merkel tries to construct. A Potemkin village is a construction that you set up literally or figuratively in which you want to give the appearance that you actually reach something, that the situation is actually good when it is actually bad. It can mean that you fake lab results when there is a milestone due on a project, or if you just set up something that just looks a certain way but it actually doesn't work yet. And you normally do that in order to stall someone or to win time, or in order to convince somebody that you succeeded when you really didn't. So it is not generally just fraud, but it is a very special subform of a lie or of fraud, which goes back, of course, to the Russian Mr. Potemkin, who was a minister and the lover of the Russian monarch Catherine II. Now, his job was back then in the 18th century to colonize the newly gained region of Crimea and to set up Russian settlements there. Now, his project didn't progress as it should have, so when Catherine II, his boss basically, came to visit and inspect the area, he set up portable fake villages, and his men dressed up as villagers, and whenever she came somewhere they acted as if this was a new settlement. After she had come through a certain area, they packed up shop and they built it up at another place that was on her journey. This is a fascinating story, so when someone in my lab, for example, was setting up something that looks like an experiment in order to take a photograph of it when he applied for grant money, we said, oh, he's building a Potemkin village in the lab so that he gets some funding. But it wasn't actually an experiment, it just looked cool. So in my opinion, this summit is a classical example of a Potemkin village that Angela Merkel builds in order to fool us all. In order to tell the German public and the CSU, oh look, we did exactly what you asked us to do, so now there is no reason anymore to close the borders unilaterally. Of course, there were also some other things that they talked about at this meeting. For example, there should be centers where you keep those migrants and process their claims, and they should be either in Northern Africa, so outside of Europe, or they should be in the border states directly. Also, some kind of swimming platforms have been discussed. And of course, increasing the budget for Frontex, our border protection force. But everything stayed very vague, so no numbers, no timeline has been given. Everything should be completely voluntary and there is no fixed rule or compulsion to anything. They just basically talked about it and they didn't decide on anything. Also, of course, the idea that African nations would take back these people is just ridiculous, because these African nations said that they don't want their people back. And this is why it is so important to not let these people set foot on European soil in the first place. We should just send those ships back to the African coast, where their home is, where they belong to, where they should stay. The only thing that this summit made clear is that there is no European solution to the problem, and that the individual nation states should just control their borders. Of course, we want open borders for legal residents and for Europeans, but not for people who shouldn't be in Europe to begin with. The Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz, our media tells us, actually threatened Germany to close the borders also if Bavaria should shut its borders now. Now, I don't think this is a threat. I think this is actually something we can work with, because the hope is that Germany closing its southern borders would set off a chain reaction in which Austria would also have to close its southern borders to Italy for welfare tourists, because those people, they couldn't just pass on to Germany. No, they would actually be stuck in Austria then for the time being. And that in turn would mean, of course, that Italy would have to secure the coast much more tightly than they already want to. And then, of course, a European solution could be found, but not a solution for redistributing people that shouldn't be in Europe at all, but actually a European solution to border defense. And this is something for which I could imagine as a German taxpayer to pay much more, because this is a real solution to the problem. The question should not be whether or not they should be in Germany or in Italy, while Germany still, of course, would have to pay for it one way or another. And it's not only about money, of course, it's also about safety. So we will see now what Angela Merkel tries to do to convince the German public that this Potemkin village of hers that actually already fell apart on the next day is an actual solution. And me and many other Germans will of course have our eyes tightly on Horst Seehofer, and we will see how he reacts to this obvious attempt at fooling the European public with this pseudo-solution that Angela Merkel presents here. So even if all of this were actually true, just to put things in perspective a little bit, there only have been several thousands of attempts by the German authorities to actually send migrants who were registered in another country already back to those countries, and in most of the cases these countries actually agreed. However, almost none of these attempts were successful, not because, as I said, other European partner countries did not agree to take them back. No, the German authorities just couldn't find them in Germany because they disappeared. So this whole debate is missing the point. As long as these people can walk around freely in the middle of Europe, not having to give anybody their address, not having any documents or whatever, this whole situation is horrible, and these solutions are not solutions at all. This is missing the point. We need to know exactly where those people are, and they must be under surveillance. So in order to sum this whole story up, the air was getting thinner for Angela Merkel because Horst Seehofer threatened to send back migrants at the German border to the countries where they were initially registered at. As a response, Angela Merkel hastily constructed a Potemkin village in the form of a fake EU summit, and in order to make things worse, she even had apparently to lie about the outcome of this fake summit, if you want to believe the word of the Hungarians, the Czech and the Polish. Now she tries to present this halfway collapsed Potemkin village to the German public and their coalition partner CSU as the big European solution. If Horst Seehofer is satisfied by that, that would just show to everybody that he wasn't serious about what he said to begin with. But be that as it may, I know that in the fall I will vote for the original, for the AfD, and not for Horst Seehofer. He and his entire party posed one too many times as the strong conservative party of the South, and then was just actually agreeing with everything that the globalists and the left said and implemented. Apparently he has no problem with the Great Replacement. Now Söder, one of Seehofer's CSU colleagues, actually claims now that the results of the summit clearly allow for national measures in order to prevent this quote-unquote secondary migration. However, Merkel disagrees here and they say no, this was never the intention of the agreement. While one has to be skeptical about whether or not there has been any agreement to begin with. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Servus, Kameraden.